They say that beneath the deepest waters of the Pacific Ocean, where light has never penetrated since the birth of the world, something sleeps that does not belong to this planet. A form so ancient that even time itself halts before its shadow. There, in the abyss, where pressure crushes steel and silence becomes a wall, lies a sunken city. A colossal metropolis, built when the seas were young and humankind had not yet learned to fear. No modern map marks it. No expedition has ever returned with proof of its existence. And yet, the oldest sailors speak of it with a strange reverence, as if uttering its name were a mistake or an invocation. They call it Relaya. They say it is a place where the water is thicker than dreams, where sounds fold in upon themselves and shadows move even when there is no light. They speak of mountains of black stone rising beneath the waves, carved at angles the human mind cannot comprehend, each block vibrating with a slow pulse, like the heart of a sleeping beast. The currents surrounding that region do not obey the laws of physics. They move as though following a gigantic breath. On certain dawns, the ocean seems to rise a little higher, and nautical instruments, compasses, radios, echo sounders, fall silent, as if something stronger than science had hushed them. Sailors, superstitious by nature, tell of nights when the sea grows unnaturally calm, and a green mist, dense and heavy, drapes the horizon. Then the air smells of iron. Birds alter their course, and from the depths a murmur ascends. It is not the crack of a fissure nor the roar of the water. It is a voice, though no human ear could say whose. It is not sound, it resonates. It passes through the body like a vibration, like a thought that was not born in the mind. A whisper that speaks words without language, yet full of meaning. For centuries, mankind has feared the sea, not for its storms, but for its memory, because the ocean remembers everything. The civilizations that sank, the sacrifices offered to the unknown, the sins man tried to hide beneath its waters. The sea is the great witness of human oblivion, and among its memories sleeps a creature once called CTHULHU, not a god, nor a demon, but something older than both. A cosmic consciousness that existed when the earth was still molten fire, and that sank into the abyss awaiting the alignment of the stars. It did not die, it merely slept, and its dreams spread across the world like an invisible net. There was a man, a solitary writer from the city of Providence, who claimed to have received visions of this being, a dreamer who put into words what others only dared to feel. He swore he did not invent stories, but translated messages that came to him in dreams. Not all believed him, but some understood he was describing something more than fiction. That man was called Lovecraft, and though the world knows him as an author of horror tales, his writings are more like warnings. Warnings about forces that do not wish to be understood. For the mere act of understanding them destroys the mind that perceives them. Lovecraft wrote that the ancient gods had not died, only slept, and that their awakening would mark the end of all reason. He said, too, that human sanity is a thin curtain, separating man from a reality so vast and terrifying that it can only be endured through ignorance. And yet, from time to time, Cthulhu's dream stirs. When that happens, the world changes. People who have never met dream the same visions. Art fills with symbols that no one teaches but everyone recognizes. The oceans tremble, compasses spin aimlessly, and men awaken with a feeling they cannot explain. A mix of fear, fascination, and nostalgia, as though something deep within their memory recalls a time before humanity. Fear, in its purest form, is not born from darkness. It arises from the knowledge that darkness, too, is watching us, and that there are things that exist beyond all perception, waiting to be remembered. If beneath the ocean something sleeps that dreams of us, what will happen the day it awakens? What will occur when dream and waking become one, and the human mind again hears that call that has echoed for millennia from the ocean's depths? Perhaps when that day comes, There will no longer be a difference between the dream of man and the dream of the god. For it may be that we are not the ones dreaming of Cthulhu, but the creatures Cthulhu imagines as he sleeps. Man lifts his eyes to the heavens seeking answers, yet forgets to look down into the abyss that holds him. We believe ourselves observers of the universe, but perhaps we are only the distorted reflection of something that dreams us from the depths of time. Perhaps life itself is but a faint vibration in the endless dream of a god who has not yet awakened. Providence, Rhode Island, spring of 1926. The air smelled of old paper and damp wood. In a Victorian house, the police found the body of Professor George Gamble Angel, chair of ancient languages at Miskatonic University. His death, according to the official report, was caused by cardiac failure. But those who knew him were aware that the old man enjoyed enviable health and a mind sharper than many younger men's. Something, or someone, had hastened his end. The professor had spent the last few weeks on an investigation he never fully revealed. His colleagues had noticed him distracted, his gaze fixed on nothing, as if he were listening to sounds others could not hear. On the desk where he was found lay a package wrapped in yellowed linen cloth, tied with hemp thread. On the cover, a note written in a firm hand read, "Do not open until my death." When his nephew, the sole heir, broke the seal, he found inside a collection of heterogeneous objects. Sea charts stained with salt, letters in French, Arabic, and a dialect no translator could recognize, and a black-covered notebook filled with dense notes. But what most caught his attention was a small statue carved from green stone, a figure that seemed alive even under the dim light of the lamp. The creature depicted belonged to no known pantheon. It had the body of a reptile, membranous wings, sharp claws, and a head crowned by a tangle of tentacles. The material of the carving was unknown, heavy, colder than metal. It seemed to emit a faint hum at the touch, an imperceptible murmur, like a seashell held to the ear. At the base of the idol, a symbol engraved repeated an impossible pattern, spirals within spirals, a geometry that seemed to shift whenever one looked away. On the first page of the notebook, the professor had written, "It does not belong to myth. It belongs to the origin. All my life, I believed myths were only echoes of collective fear. But this object, this idol, is not a representation. It is a fragment, a piece torn from something greater." Rumors led me to a dying sailor in New Orleans. He claimed to have seen creatures worshiping under the moon, in a swamp where the air smelled of iron and blood. He spoke of a forbidden name, a chant no language could contain, Cthulhu. He said it means Cthulhu dreams, but I could have sworn he uttered it as a plea or a reminder. Since then, my nights have been filled with visions. Towers submerged in black oceans, temples built by hands that were not human, and a red sky turning above an impossible city. In my dreams, I hear voices that do not come through the ear, but through thought. I do not know whether I am being inspired or warned. The nephew, intrigued and terrified, kept reading. Among the notes were cross-references to police reports, newspaper extracts, and letters from other researchers. All spoke of nocturnal rituals, strange chants, hooded figures, and a symbol, a tentacle encircling a star. In one of the envelopes, he found a copy of an official document from the New Orleans Police Department, the transcript of a raid conducted in 1908 in the Louisiana swamps. The report described how officers discovered a group of people gathered around a monolith covered in slime. At its summit rested an idol identical to the professor's. The participants, men and women of diverse races and ages, chanted phrases without meaning in unison. The police chief noted, "The language corresponds to no known tongue. Some sounds resemble Arabic, others Polynesian. The melody of the chant provokes a physical unease difficult to describe." When the officers intervened, the participants did not flee. They continued chanting as the lanterns illuminated their ecstatic faces. They only stopped when the first shots were fired. Among the confiscated objects was another green idol, slightly larger. It was sent to Miskatonic University for analysis. There, Professor Angel began the investigation that would eventually consume him. The coincidences between the prisoner's testimonies and the dreams he himself had begun to experience were too exact to be mere chance. The diary recorded in precise detail the deterioration of his mental state. Sleepless nights, incomplete sentences, drawings of tentacled shapes, and maps of the Pacific with areas marked in red. In the margins, he sometimes repeated a single word, written over and over. R'lyeh. I have come to understand that this entity does not belong to our conception of time. It neither lives, nor dies, nor exists in the human sense. It is the memory of an age when the earth was young, when the seas were its breath and the continents its eyelids. If anyone finds this notebook, do not follow my steps. Do not seek its name, do not trace its symbols. For what sleeps dreams, and dreams sometimes can listen. The nephew closed the notebook with trembling hands. Rain struck hard against the glass. For an instant, he thought the sound of the water formed a rhythm, a constant pulse, like a heart beating underground. He turned off the lamp, but the greenish glow of the idol remained visible in the shadows, as if the stone emitted its own light. That night, he dreamed of a bottomless ocean and a voice calling his name. Knowledge is the flame that guides man out of darkness. But there are fires that do not illuminate, only consume. Perhaps not everything that can be discovered was meant to be understood, for there are truths that, once seen, will never let us sleep again. Among Professor Engel's documents, his nephew found an envelope with broken seals and marks of moisture. Inside was a detailed police report, written in nearly faded ink, dated March 1908. The sender was Captain John Raymond Legrasse of the New Orleans Police Department. The heading read, Subject, Incident in the Southern Swamps. Unknown sect. Unidentified ritual. The report described a police operation conducted after several fishermen had disappeared near the Mississippi Delta. The locals spoke of lights in the forest, chants, and a nauseating stench carried by the wind to nearby villages. When the officers reached the site, they encountered a scene for which no training could have prepared them. In the center of the swamp was a clearing, and in its middle, a black stone altar covered in slime. The ground was wet, marked by barefoot prints and symbols carved into the earth. A group of men, more than 50, surrounded the monolith. Their bodies were smeared with mud and ash. Their eyes shone with fanaticism. At the top of the altar rested a green stone figure, identical to the one the professor had kept. Witnesses described the scene as an orgy of madness. The participants chanted guttural hymns, a mixture of animal and human sounds. The torches crackled in the damp air, and the atmosphere vibrated with a slow, hypnotic rhythm, like a heart keeping the beat of the abyss. When the officers broke in, the torches extinguished themselves. The chant stopped, and for a moment, the entire swamp fell silent. Then, something moved beneath the water. I will never forget that night. There was a smell that did not belong to the earth, a mixture of salt, iron, and wet flesh. When we aimed our lanterns at the altar, one of the men lifted the idol. He did not try to flee. He raised it proudly, as if he wanted to show it to us. His face was covered with a smile that was not human. He said something none of us understood, but all of us felt. A vibration in the chest, in the bones, as if the earth itself were responding. Then the water began to bubble. It wasn't raining, there was no wind, yet the swamp stirred. One of my men shouted, having seen something move beneath the surface. We didn't have time to shoot. The boy was dragged down. When the water calmed again, only his hat remained floating. We fired into the dark mass of the swamp, but nothing changed. After a few seconds, silence returned. The cultists had knelt down. They were crying, laughing, murmuring a word. CTHULHU. After the confrontation, the surviving cultists were arrested and taken to the New Orleans jail. The interrogations revealed little. None seemed to understand the language they had spoken during the ritual, yet all repeated the same phrase with identical pronunciation. The leader of the group, an elderly mulatto man with glassy eyes, claimed that he was neither the first nor the last of his kind. He said their cult had existed before the pyramids. and that his people worshipped a being that slept beneath the ocean, waiting for its moment. Before dying in his cell, the old man wrote a single phrase on the wall with his own blood. "He shall come when the stars are ready." The report included sketches of the idol, along with comparisons to petroglyphs found in Iceland, Egypt, and the Australian desert. The symbols matched. It could not be coincidence. Identical cults, separated by oceans and centuries, worshipping the same figure, uttering the same forbidden name. Professor Angel realized that this was not religion. It was a genetic inheritance of fear, an instinctive worship passed down like a memory in the blood. His diary revealed a shift in his writing. The once meticulous notes had become obsessive. His handwriting grew uneven, his sentences fragmented. He drew the silhouette of the idol again and again, with slight variations, as if trying to recall something long forgotten. The cult does not worship a god. They await him. They say he sleeps beneath the city of Relaya, in a chamber sealed with living runes, and that his dream is the origin of all human dreams. Sometimes when they sleep, they hear his voice, not in words, but in sensations: water, cold, pressure, a desire to sink. The stars determine his awakening. When they align again, the city will rise, and Cthulhu will emerge from the ocean. The world will tremble beneath his thought. There will be no death, no madness, no salvation, only memory. On the final page of the report, Legrasse wrote that the idol was delivered to Miskatonic University for scientific safekeeping. No one ever saw it again, but from that date onward, local fishermen began reporting strange phenomena. Fish swimming in circles until they died, tides rising without cause, and a vibration in the water that made boats tremble even on calm days. It was as if the sea remembered what had happened in that swamp, as if something deep below had heard the call. The nephew, reading those notes, understood that his uncle had been consumed by something beyond reason. And yet, he could not stop himself. That night, he opened the drawer where he kept the idol and stared at it for hours. He could have sworn the stone moved, that its surface breathed. When he finally turned off the lamp, the green glow persisted. And in his dreams, he heard voices. Voices that spoke his name with a tone of welcome. Fear is contagious, but faith even more so. Perhaps humanity needs to believe, even without knowing in what. Maybe to worship the abyss is, in the end, a way of remembering where we came from. Because even in the darkest corners of the mind, we keep searching for something greater than ourselves, even if that something never promised to save us. For weeks, Professor Engel's nephew pored over every document, every letter, every note. The more he read, the more he understood that his uncle had not been alone in his obsession. There were others across continents who had felt the same presence. And the most disturbing thing, their accounts matched in time. The archive spoke of an unusual phenomenon: shared dreams. People separated by oceans, cultures, and languages dreamed of the same visions: an impossible city, black towers rising from the sea, a spiraling sky, and the overwhelming sense of being watched from the depths. Reports came from everywhere: a French sculptor in Marseille, a Japanese fisherman, an Italian nun who awoke screaming words she did not understand, a child in Valparaiso who drew, without knowing how to write, the same symbol carved upon the green idol. Authorities ignored the reports, but doctors and psychiatrists began recording what they called the sea dream crisis. Patients in different countries claimed to feel the same emotional pull, a force drawing them toward the ocean. Many vanished soon after. Others were found wandering the shores, murmuring senseless phrases. He spoke to me in dreams. The water breathes. It won't be long now. The newspapers called it coincidence, an epidemic of collective hysteria. But the university's private archives revealed a precise correlation. Each wave of dreams coincided with seismic tremors in the South Pacific. The same point, the same frequency, the same pattern. I can't sleep. Every night, I see a sunken city built of breathing stone. The buildings have no windows, only openings that pulse like lungs. From them drifts a green mist that sings. At first, I thought it was a nightmare, but then I began to paint it, and I realized I already knew it. I had not dreamed it. I was remembering. When my wife saw the painting, she began to weep. She said the shape of the horizon felt familiar. That as a child, she dreamed of that same sea. I burned the paintings, but the smoke scent made me remember his name. Cthulhu. The dreams grew stronger after an earthquake struck the Pacific west of New Zealand. Scientists called it a simple tectonic adjustment, but sailors spoke of something different, a pulse, a vibration that rippled through the water for hours. Compasses spun aimlessly, whales changed their routes, and several ships reported feeling the sea rise as if it breathed. In the nights that followed, coastal inhabitants awoke drenched in sweat, haunted by dreams they could not recall, yet left them weeping. For weeks I've dreamed of a long, damp corridor beneath the water. At the end, there's a massive door. It's covered in algae and carvings that move, as though the stones themselves were breathing. I hear footsteps behind me, but when I turn, there's only darkness and a sound, like a heart beating very slowly. A voice tells me to open the door. It doesn't sound like a command, but a plea. It says time is running out, that the dream must end. Sometimes I think the door isn't in the ocean, but in my mind. The nephew realized that this call was not merely symbolic. It was a real impulse, a frequency that pierced the human mind. The sensitive perceived it as dreams, others as inspiration, and some as madness. Medical records described it as mental resonance syndrome, but the professor's notes called it something else. The voice of the abyss. According to his theories, Cthulhu did not merely sleep beneath the sea, but within humanity's collective unconscious. He was a biological memory, an imprint left in the DNA from the dawn of life. The myth was not invention, but inheritance. Perhaps humanity's fear of the ocean, its pull toward the unknown, and its recurring dreams of drowned landscapes are not coincidences. Perhaps within us all lies the nostalgia of that ancient time, when the waters were our home and the sky did not yet exist. Maybe the call never ceased. Maybe it was always there, dormant, waiting for humanity to remember its origin. For if Cthulhu's dream is eternal, then life itself may be nothing more than an interruption of his sleep. I've begun to dream as well, not of monsters, but of impossible landscapes. I feel the sea in my breath, the weight of water on my eyelids. In my dreams, I'm not afraid. There's something familiar in the darkness, as if I were coming home. Last night, I heard the same murmur my uncle described. It no longer comes from the ocean, but from within me. Perhaps the awakening will not happen out there, but inside everyone who listens. The world went on, as always. But beneath the surface, something had changed. The oceans moved with a different rhythm. And on moonless nights, the wind seemed to whisper a word no one wished to hear. Cthulhu. The oldest human fear is not death, but remembrance. For if we were once something more than human, if we were part of the dream of a sleeping god, then every nightmare is only a message calling us back. Perhaps we do not dream of Cthulhu. Perhaps, still asleep, he dreams of us. On April 18, 1926, the Norwegian merchant ship Emma intercepted a distress signal from the South Pacific. The message was weak, fragmented, as if the sea itself were trying to swallow it before it reached its destination. Only a few words could be made out amid the static. Relia has risen. The sky is wrong. Captain Collins, a man of experience and restrained superstition, decided to alter his course. The men protested. No sane sailor sails toward an unnamed coordinate, but curiosity and duty prevailed. They advanced toward the exact point where the signal had been born. For days, the ocean remained uneasy. The waves struck the hull with an irregular rhythm, as if something beneath the surface were breathing. The air grew dense and metallic. The instruments failed, and the rudder began to turn on its own, as though an invisible force were guiding the ship to a precise destination. When dawn broke, the horizon changed. What had been only sea had transformed. Before the eyes of the crew rose a colossal, black, glistening city, oozing a greenish glow through the mist. A city that appeared on no map. A mass of living stone that defied every human geometry. Relaya had risen from the depths of the ocean. The vision was so overwhelming that no one spoke for a long time. The structures seemed to melt and solidify again, as if time itself had no fixed direction there. Angles were not angles. Shadows did not follow light. The walls seemed to breathe with the rhythm of the sea. One sailor whispered a prayer. Another began to weep. The rest stood motionless, hypnotized by an architecture that seemed designed by a mind alien to all logic. And yet, they all felt the same thing, an irresistible pull, as though something inside them recognized that place. They went ashore. The ground was not solid. It yielded slightly, as if they were walking upon the body of a sleeping creature. The air was thick, hard to breathe, filled with a salty odor that seemed to come from the very core of the stone. The silence was absolute, broken only by a steady, rhythmic sound, the slow beat of a heart buried beneath miles of rock and water. They pressed on until they reached a cyclopean door. It had no hinges or lock, only a spiral relief. A familiar shape, identical to the symbol carved upon the green idols. The youngest of the group stepped forward and placed his hand on the stone. He said he could feel something behind it, a vibration speaking without words. And in that instant, the door opened. What emerged from that void had no defined form. It was neither flesh nor shadow. It was a colossal mass made of solid water, smoke, and thought. Its eyes were luminous wells, and each movement distorted the air around it, as if reality itself could not endure its presence. The creature did not walk. It slid, and with each step, the world seemed to contract. Cthulhu. The name resounded in the minds of all who stood there. It was not spoken, but remembered, as though they had always known it. The mere act of looking at it was enough to lose the notion of time. The stars seemed to bend toward the earth, and the men felt their thoughts dissolve into an ocean of consciousness. Captain Collins fell to his knees. His mind broke in silence. Others tried to flee, but the ground tilted beneath their feet, and a deep, incomprehensible laughter filled the air. It was not mockery. It was the sound of something so vast it did not know the difference between mercy and cruelty. Johansen, the Norwegian sailor, later described the moment with unbearable precision. A living, tentacled mass that advanced without moving, a presence that filled space and emptied it at once. The sea rose like a liquid wall, and the sky curved downward as if trying to escape. They fired their weapons. Nothing happened. The bullets passed through its body without harm. It was like shooting a dream. One man screamed, another fell to his knees, and the rest simply stopped resisting. Johansen wrote later, "There is no hatred in its eyes, no hunger, no rage. Only indifference, a cosmic indifference, the certainty that to that being, humanity was nothing but dust floating upon a drop of water." The sea roared. An earthquake shook the island, and then, as if the ocean itself took pity, the waters began to rise. Relaya sank slowly once more into the depths, while the creature dissolved into the mist, fading without truly vanishing. Johansen's final memory was of a gaze that pierced him, a gaze that did not look at him, but at the entire world. Days later, Johansen was found in a lifeboat, delirious, drifting among the wreckage of the Emma. His testimony was dismissed as the ravings of castaway, but the sailors who rescued him swore they had felt a vibration in the water, a deep, slow, rhythmic pulse, like a heartbeat beneath the sea. Scientists who later investigated the area recorded magnetic anomalies for weeks. Compasses refused to point north. Seismographs captured regular pulses from the deep. Satellites passing overhead detected shifting shadows and impossible depth. And though the ocean closed its wounds again, the sense that something had changed never disappeared. Since then, sailors say there are nights when the sea breathes. And when it does, the wind seems to whisper a name that does not belong to Earth. Cthulhu. Not all that sleeps lies in rest. Some things dream as they slumber, and their dreams hold the power to shape the world. Perhaps every storm, every earthquake, every unexplainable fear that grips us in the dark is but a sigh from the God who still sleeps beneath the sea. And perhaps, when the last star fades, Cthulhu will open his eyes and realize that everything we call life was only the echo of his dream. After the sinking of Relia, the world believed it had returned to calm. The oceans regained their silence, the clocks resumed their course, and the shores forgot the murmur of that city that had risen from the abyss. But silence is not always peace. Sometimes, silence is only the held breath of fear. In the days that followed, a series of inexplicable events repeated themselves across the planet. In Iceland, glaciers began to emit a low, constant hum that made scientific instruments vibrate. In Egypt, a sandstorm uncovered ruins buried beneath the desert, columns engraved with symbols identical to those on the green idol. In Polynesia, fishermen returned at dawn with empty eyes, murmuring prayers that no language could recognize. And on moonless nights, the tides rose even when the sea should have been at rest. Governments concealed the reports. The press spoke of meteorological phenomena, of mass hysteria, of superstition. But in the coastal cities, people began to share the same dream. A vast door beneath the water, a corridor of stone, a green radiance pulsing like a heart. Some awoke screaming, others awoke weeping, and a few simply did not awake at all. Psychiatrists recorded a sudden increase in patients who claimed to hear the sea even on dry land. In hospitals, doctors and nurses reported that certain dying patients whispered impossible names in their agony, as if recalling a language older than mankind itself. A woman in Marseille wrote upon her cell wall in blood, "He has dreamed again." Compasses failed, radios filled with white noise, and seabirds changed their routes. In the harbors, ships seemed to float more heavily, as though something beneath the surface were pulling at them with invisible strength. And small children, without knowing why, refused to go near the water. The priests spoke of omens, the scientists of magnetism, but the old ones knew the truth. When the ocean stirs without wind, it is because it remembers. The echo of Cthulhu's awakening did not remain confined to the sea. It seeped into dreams, into music, into mathematics. Composers began to write melodies that looped in impossible patterns. Architects dreamed of structures they could never build. And astronomers claimed to see constellations in the sky that vanished with the dawn. It was as though the entire world were remembering something it had forgotten for millennia. The god's dream had not ended. It had merely dispersed, like a wave traveling through water until it reached every shore of human thought. A philosopher wrote in his journal, "Perhaps the universe was never created. Perhaps it was only remembered." Meanwhile, deep beneath the Pacific, the seismographs registered a constant pulse, a heartbeat repeating every 80 seconds, too regular to be a tremor, too alive to be a machine. Experts called it the signal of the abyss. Sailors simply called it the heart of the sea. No one said it aloud, but all felt the same. Cthulhu had gone back to sleep, though now his dream encompassed the entire world. There are no borders for a dream that spreads through thought. Perhaps humanity was never a witness to his awakening, but part of his breathing. Each mind that remembers, each nightmare, is a cell in the body of a god still asleep. And when he fully awakens, he will remember that we were never alive, outside his dream. I have told this story again and again, and each time I feel that the voice speaking is not my own. Sometimes I think I am not a narrator, but a conduit, a mere echo of something that longs to be remembered. The myth of Cthulhu was not born with Lovecraft, nor with the ancients. It was born with the first shadow that looked upon the sea and feared its depth. It was born with the first man who dreamed of something greater than himself. And since then, the myth repeats itself, changing language, form, century, but never vanishing. Every word written about him, every drawing, every tale, is a crack in the wall that separates him from the world. And each time someone speaks his name, that crack widens. I have spent so much time studying these stories that I no longer know what is real and what is dreamed. There are nights when the sound of the keyboard merges with the murmur of the sea, and I swear I can hear a breath between the pauses of my thoughts. A breath that is not mine. Now I understand that knowledge does not always illuminate. Sometimes it only opens doors. Doors that cannot be closed again. Perhaps that was what Professor Angel tried to warn us about. Perhaps those who followed him were not curious, but called. The call was not to the ear, but to the soul. And those who answered never returned the same. I have tried to stop writing, but the words keep flowing on their own, as if the ink remembered an older language. I no longer write by choice, but by obedience. Each sentence I finish brings a fleeting sense of relief, followed by a whisper telling me to continue. Sometimes I dream of a quill moving across an endless page, and of a hand that is not mine, writing my name beside all those who narrated before me. A chain of voices bound by the same purpose, to keep alive the memory of what sleeps. The myth feeds on memory, and memory feeds on fear. As long as someone remembers his name, Cthulhu will never be fully asleep. Perhaps that is the true curse, that the story can never stop being told. And if one day someone reads these words and feels a chill, if they hear a faint murmur when the sea is calm, or if in dreams they see a green door beneath the waves, do not try to understand. Just remember this. Words are seeds, and some, when spoken, awaken. Do not fear the myth. Fear the moment it ceases to be one. For gods do not need temples, only memory. And as long as there are those who remember his name, Cthulhu will go on dreaming within us, waiting for the moment when the story repeats itself. No one knows how long it has been since the sinking of Relia. The human calendar was lost amid the tides of oblivion. Civilizations vanished without a trace, and the sea, patient, once more covered everything man had raised. Cities drowned in their own silence. Monuments dissolved like salt in the water, and words turned to dust. Only the ocean continued its murmur, whispering a language that belongs neither to life nor to death. Beneath its waters, in the abyss where light never reaches, an ancient vibration began to pulse again. It was not a physical tremor, but the echo of a mind awakening. For millennia, Relia had slept, submerged in the deepest blackness, waiting for the alignment of stars men no longer knew how to name. And when that moment came, the stone stirred. The towers rose slowly from the mire. The gates opened like wounds forced to heal, and the water, thick and alive, began to boil without heat. The entire ocean held its breath. Cthulhu dreamed once more. But this time, his dream was not a nightmare. It was pure creation. Within his mind, entire worlds were born. Planets of violet seas, liquid skies, moons that breathed. Each thought of his gave shape to a universe. And within each universe, tiny beings looked up at the heavens with fear and wonder, unaware that they were ideas contained within another dream. Time did not exist. Space had no boundaries. Everything repeated in infinite cycles. Life, memory, oblivion. The stars revolved around him like sentinels. The cosmos bowed before his thought, and each time a civilization arose, a shadow lifted from its oceans to remind it of its origin. Thus the ages passed. The creatures of every world discovered fire, invented words, raised temples, and without knowing why, they shaped figures with tentacles and wings. Some worshipped them, others feared them, but all in some way remembered the same name, Cthulhu. For the myth does not belong to Earth. It is a universal reflection, a constant in the geometry of thought. And while the god dreamed, the worlds within his mind dreamed of him. Galaxies were born and died in his breath. The stars were thoughts that shone for an instant before fading. And each of his silences lasted 1 billion years. In that silence, the void became fertile, nebulae ignited. Creatures rose from slumbering matter. The dream continued, and somewhere, far away, a young, curious, and arrogant race once again looked upon the ocean, unaware that what it contemplated was its own origin. Cthulhu did not regard them with malice nor with love. He simply remembered them. Each thought of his was a seed, each seed a story, and each story a life. The gods do not punish. They simply think, and when they do, the entire universe trembles. The universe was not born with an explosion, but with an idea, a thought that still resonates in the depths of the sea and the human soul. Perhaps there is no difference between dreaming and creating, between remembering and existing. Maybe the gods do not sleep because they are weary, but because while they sleep, they think. And their thoughts are so vast. They require whole ages to complete. Every world, every species, is a word spoken within a single divine dream. And when the gods dream again, all that was and will be is remade in a single breath. Nothing truly dies. Everything is remembered, and memory is the oldest form of eternity. The sea returned to calm, but the calm of the ocean is not forgetfulness. It is waiting. Centuries passed, and men once again forgot. The myth dissolved into superstition. The warnings became tales, and the word Cthulhu turned into a sound without meaning, a note lost within the collective memory. Yet somewhere, on the edge of a cliff battered by the wind, there lives a man who remembers. No one knows how or why. Some say he is immortal, others that he is only a shadow of the past, an echo caught between dream and reality. He writes every night. His cabin smells of salt and damp. On his table lie piles of notebooks covered in dust, and in each one the same drawing. A sunken city, a gate, a winged figure with a head of tentacles. The man does not draw by will. He says his hand moves on its own, as if responding to an impulse that does not come from his mind. Sometimes he wakes with ink-stained fingers, and the sound of the sea pounding against the glass. Other times, he finds phrases written that he does not remember composing, phrases in languages that do not exist, in symbols that seem to twist when stared at for too long. One night, as he writes, he feels something move beneath his feet. The ground trembles, the lamps flicker, and the air fills with a humming that does not come from the wind. He runs to the window. The sea is calm, but the horizon glows with a green light. Then he understands. The cycle did not end. It merely rested. The man takes his notebook and writes one final line, his handwriting trembling but steady. The dream continues. Then he sets down the pen, walks to the door, and steps toward the shore. His silhouette fades into the mist, and no one sees him again. At dawn, the fishermen find his house empty. On the table lies the open notebook, and a spreading stain of water upon its pages, as if a drop of the sea had fallen there. In the nights that follow, the villagers begin to dream of him. They see him riding beneath the water, surrounded by a greenish light, while behind him rises a vast shadow that breathes. The sound of the sea changes. It is no longer the murmur of waves, but the sound of a pen writing without pause. And among the whispers of the wind, someone swears they hear the man's voice repeating in an endless whisper. The ocean remembers. The ocean remembers. Years pass. The village vanishes. But those who arrive later find the ruins of a cabin, and within it, an inscription carved into stone. I was a witness. No one knows who wrote it, nor when, but the sea, striking the cliffs, seems to answer with a deep echo, as if repeating the words in another language. Older, vaster, one only the abyss can understand. Every story needs a witness, and every witness an end. But when the tale is eternal, witnesses become dreams. Perhaps the last narrator is not a man, but the ocean itself, repeating again and again what the world tries to forget. Maybe there is no difference between writing and remembering, between living and dreaming. If the sea holds memory, then each wave is a word, and each word a prayer time cannot erase. The myth does not die. It transforms, hides, waits. And when someone tells it again, the cycle is reborn. Perhaps this story is not an invention. Perhaps you, in hearing it, have become its new witness. And when you close your eyes tonight, if you hear the murmur of the sea in your dreams, it will not be the wind. It will be the ocean, whispering like an ancient vow. The dream continues. Professor Engel's manuscript was sealed in a safety deposit box and never published. His nephew disappeared soon after leaving one final message for a colleague. I dreamed of the city. This time I was not an observer. I was inside. No one ever saw him again. The fragments of the Green Idol were sent to the University Museum. But months later, their disappearance was reported. There were no signs of theft or damage to the display case. Only a faint mist on the inside of the glass, as if something had breathed behind it before leaving. In the years that followed, the seas began to behave strangely. The tides grew erratic, nautical instruments failed without cause, and ships reported losing their bearings for hours, in waters untouched by storms. Scientists blamed undersea currents, magnetic anomalies, or human error. But old sailors knew better. They said the ocean was restless, that the sea no longer slept as it once did. Across the world, rumors began to circulate. Fishermen claimed to hear a deep song beneath the waves. Entire crews swore they saw lights moving in the ocean depths. Explorers spoke of islands appearing and vanishing within the fog. All told the same story. The sea was breathing. Governments kept silent. Scientific institutions refused to comment. But some scholars, in whispers, said what no one dared admit. That Relia had not fully sunk, that its pulse could still be heard in the Pacific depths, and that Cthulhu's dream had not ended, only changed its rhythm. The professor's nephew, before vanishing, wrote one final letter. No one knows to whom it was addressed. In it, he said, "I have come to understand that the myth is not a story, but a warning. Cthulhu did not sleep beneath the ocean, but within us. He is the memory of what we were before we were human. The sea does not imprison him, it reflects him." No one wrote about the subject again for years. But the sea kept murmuring, and the wind still carried a word that blended with the sound of the waves. Cthulhu. Science tells us we know more about the universe than about the oceans. And perhaps that is why we look to the stars for answers, when the truly unfathomable has always been beneath our feet. Cthulhu is not merely a sleeping monster. He is the embodiment of everything mankind cannot comprehend, and yet somehow still feels. The ocean is his mirror, our minds his echo, and every human dream is a small fissure through which his consciousness breathes. Perhaps humanity itself is nothing more than a thought, drifting within his slumbering mind. Perhaps the entire world is but the reflection of his dream, a flicker in the eternity of a god who will one day open his eyes again. When that moment comes, all that we know, history, time, reason, will vanish like foam dissolving on the sand. And the universe will remember what it has always known. That which sleeps is not dead, and that in the ages to come. Even death may die. The stars continue their course. The ocean remains silent, and in the depths of Relia, something breathes. The universe needs no witnesses, only dreamers. And perhaps that is what we are, fleeting dreams, within a consciousness still sleeping beneath the sea. When it awakens, our memory will fade, like a nightmare that God forgets upon opening his eyes. Time passed, but the myth did not disappear. It only changed its shape. The names were lost, the temples sank, but fear continued its course, silent, immutable, like a current that never stops. No one speaks the word Cthulhu anymore, and yet we all remember it without knowing. It lives in the dreams that wake us in cold sweat, in our fascination with the abyss, in that urge to gaze upon the ocean and feel that something is watching us from within. Generations have changed, but the shadow remains. Humanity built cities upon the earth, raised towers higher than mountains, and lit fires to disguise the darkness. But the sea endures, vast, patient, eyeless, watching with the calm of one who does not know time. Myths do not die, they merely transform. What the ancients worshipped with fear, we study with curiosity. What they call gods, we call natural forces. But deep down, we are the same. We still seek meaning in chaos. We still fear what we cannot understand. The ocean keeps the memory of the world. Everything that once was, everything that ever thought or dreamed, remains down there, suspended in the liquid vastness. The sounds men cannot hear, the vibrations no instrument can record, are the sighs of the earth remembering its past. Sometimes, when the storms fall silent, the sea speaks, and those who know how to listen can hear a rhythm in the waves, an ancient pulse repeating the same truth. Since the beginning of time, everything returns. Perhaps dreams are not visions, but memories. Perhaps every nightmare is a warning, and every shadow an echo of something that once was real. For if the myth persists, it is because it has not ended. It has merely changed its place. It no longer dwells in temples or forgotten books, but within us, in the blood, in the mind, in that unspoken impulse that makes us look toward the horizon and feel nostalgia for something we never lived. Man believes he dominates the world, yet deep down he knows there are things he will never control, and among them all, the ocean is the oldest. The sea cannot be possessed. It can only be feared. It can only be remembered. For beneath its waters beats a heart that does not belong to humankind. Perhaps Cthulhu will not awaken with fire or ruin, but with a thought, an idea so ancient that no human mind could contain it. A truth that, once remembered, will bring him back. And when that day comes, there will be no screams, no wars, no end of the world. Only the absolute silence of a god finally opening his eyes, realizing he has been dreaming for eons. And we, the shadows of his dream, will vanish without a trace, like a forgotten thought among the waves. The ocean will remain, the myth will remain, and the cycle, once more, will begin again. The sea never forgets. It only waits. And within every human heart beats in silence the memory of the first fear. Perhaps we are not the creators of the myth, but its most recent echo. And as long as someone remembers, Cthulhu will go on dreaming. The sea remains, sometimes calm, sometimes furious, but always watching with that infinite patience that only things untouched by time possess. The waves strike the rocks as if repeating a forgotten word, and beneath their foam, in the deep, the city of Relia sleeps shrouded in shadows. No one has seen it, but everyone has dreamed of it at least once. It is etched into the mind of humanity, like a scar that stretches across the centuries. Perhaps we do not need to gaze into the abyss to know it exists. It is enough to close our eyes, listen to the murmur of the water, and feel how something inside us responds. For the oldest fear of man is not of darkness, nor of death, but of remembering what we were before we became human, remembering what sleeps beneath the ocean, remembering that we are not alone, neither above, nor below, nor within ourselves. The sea does not forget. It only waits, and in its waiting, it keeps the complete history of the world, the voices of those who dreamed, and the name of that which will awaken again. And while the wind blows over its waters, while the horizon still burns with the reflection of the sun, the myth will continue to breathe, invisibly, silently, eternally. Perhaps we're nothing more than a wave in the ocean of a sleeping god. And when we break upon the shore of time, we do not disappear. We only begin again. The ocean falls silent, but its silence is not peace. It is the breathing of something that sleeps and dreams of us. And in that dream, perhaps it has allowed us to hear its story. If you have made it this far, you are no longer a mere spectator. You are part of this journey. You have listened to what few dare to hear, and that makes you a seeker of the unseen. This is Mitos Legendarios, a space where words and the echoes of the past converge, where legends are not told, they are awakened. Here, there is no rush. Every story lasts as long as it must. An hour of immersion, an hour to feel, to imagine, and to remember that not everything that dwells in darkness is dead. This is the course I want the channel to take. Long stories, narrated calmly, with respect for the myth and for those who listen. I want Mitos Legendarios to be a refuge for all who love the unknown, for those who enjoy being carried away by a voice, an atmosphere, a story that seems to come from another age. Each week will bring a new voyage, a full hour to explore the mysteries that watch us from the shadows. We will travel to the frozen forests where the Wendigo prowls, hear the eternal cry of La Llorona, and explore the ancient temples of Olympus, where Zeus and Hercules still debate the fate of man. We will cross the deserts of ancient Egypt to find the traces of Cleopatra, the secrets of the gods who walked among pharaohs, and the truths that history chose to bury under sand in silence. But we will also look closer to modern legends, to myths born in the 21st century, among cables, screens, and digital dreams. Because fear no longer lives only in ruins or temples. Now it hides in cities, in collective memory, in stories that have yet to be told. I want this channel to be a beacon for those who seek that, a place where mystery is not trivialized, but honored, breathed, and shared. If this kind of content speaks to you, if you enjoy losing yourself in one-hour stories, where voice, music, and image merge into a single experience, then this is your home. And I want to know, tell me in the comments what you think of this format. If you would like future episodes to follow this path, or if there's a myth, legend, or story you have always wanted to understand. From the ancient gods to modern monsters, from Greek myths to Latin American legends, Mitos Legendarios will travel through every corner, where humanity has tried to explain the inexplicable. If there is a name that haunts you, a story that keeps you awake, write it below. Perhaps in the next chapter, we will tell it together. This is the beginning of a journey that has only just begun, and I would like you to be part of it from the very start. Subscribe, share, leave your mark, not to feed the algorithm, but to keep alive that which time tries to erase. Because as long as someone remembers a myth, as long as someone listens to a story with an open heart, the fire remains lit. And here, in Mitos Legendarios, that fire will burn, as long as there is darkness left to illuminate. Fear does not die. It only changes shape, and every story we tell will be a new way to remember it.